what, 2 hours now? How about standing up for me? We're going to shake this up a little bit. And standing right where you are, I want you to do a slow 360 for me. And take a look around the room while you turn around and then come back and face. Think about 3 separate individuals that you have met during this conference. Think about what it is that had you remember them. It may be an item on their wardrobe. It may be their voice. It may be something they said. It may have been their manners. And when you've got your 3 ideas, why do I do that? The question is, are you memorable? Do you stand out from the crowd? Branding has changed over the years. Historically, your company was measured its success based on your service or your price point. That was enough to build revenue. That's no longer true. Thanks to the economy, we now have far more commoditized markets. The playing field has been shaken out. The weak players have closed their shutters. And those that are still working are operating at a high cadence. So how do you stand out? The single influential factor is building relationships, your human assets. No longer are the lines very clear who's the buyer, who's the seller. It's very blurred. You now have client evangelism, customers, social media blogging out there. You have crowdsourcing. There's all sorts of questions as to who's in charge, who's driving the marketplace. So now what consumers are asking for is experience, speed, authenticity. The question is if you spoke to these 5 different categories, would you see, would you hear, would you feel the same story? Or is there a breakdown somewhere? I want you to step to the outside, sort of sit into your own audience, and consider how likely would you be to refer your company. And choose a number from 1 to 10, highly being 10, most unlikely being 1, and think about where you land on that scale. Your organization first, and then you as an individual second. From the outside perspective, an organization sends out a survey once a year, 10 questions or less, that gauges customer satisfaction based on ranking from 1 to 10. And the Net Promoter Score is the difference between the 9s and the 10s, your promoters, and the 0s, or the ones through the 6, your detractors. It's the difference of those together. So you want to look at your organization and say, where are we today? Currently today, we spend 95% of our time troubleshooting, and only 5% on those 9s and 10 customers. If you can harness the power of your 9s and 10s, your promoters, you can build your revenue with just 5% more time on your promoters. You can build your revenue 15 to 20%. Whether you like it or not, you have a personal brand. You were born with it. The question is, how's it going for you? Is it working? Are you viewed as an asset or a hindrance to your organization? What exactly is personal branding? I've got 2 definitions for you here. One is it's a collection of your attributes, your skills, your knowledge, and your character. Or said another way, it's your personality, perception, how you're perceived, and the promotion of yourself, a combination of these together. The goal of personal branding is to align who you are with what you do and how you show up in the world. When you align those 2 together, you create a magnetism that brings opportunities that you're looking for to you. Those are those moments when you're saying, wow, how did I get here? How did this happen? And you're lit up and you're excited about it. Not only are you memorable, you're memorable far beyond your first impression. You're building relationships. How do I start to build a personal brand if I'm not really sure what it is? I'll walk you through this briefly. Start by looking at what are your top 5 values. What is truly important to you internally? And if this is important to you internally, how do you participate in the world? What organizations do you belong to? What job do you hold? What are your hobbies? What vacations do you go on? And if that's how you participate, How do you want to be remembered when you're in those events or in those locations? And once you're being remembered, you're there, you're out there with an intention, how do people physically see you? What soft skills are you using to embody what is now your personal brand? When you see someone coming at you across the room, you're being subconsciously judged. They're judging you on your education level, your socio-economical, your education, your trust factor, and your credibility. You haven't even opened your mouth yet. You're not even in front of them. How does that feel? Raise your hand if that's scary to you. See a couple? Yeah. Hey, my hand's way up here. That is really scary. You haven't done anything, and they've already pegged you. So what do you do about that? How do you do that? How do you address that? 20 years ago, we had an attention span of 20 minutes. Today, the BBC just announced attention span of humans, 9 seconds. Ready? Go! Consider your first impression is like standing at a door. You're standing in front of a closed door and your audience is on the other side of the door. It's your job to invoke enough curiosity and excitement that they open the door for you. Once they open the door, that's when you can do your 20-minute conversation, your 30-second elevator pitch. It's far less about the content of what you say in this 9 seconds than it is about authenticity and enthusiasm. A lot of the time people hesitate or people are nervous to actually be themselves. I see this one individual at work, one individual at home. You wouldn't recognize them if they were standing next to each other. It's like multiple personalities. Do you bring yourself to the workplace? Do you share about who you are? Presence. Are you in the game or are you sitting on the sidelines? Think about when you came to the conference today. How did you prepare? Were you aware who was going to be in the room? Did you do your research? Did you set goals? Did you have a strategy? Let's think about this morning when you came and you had breakfast in the lobby. How did you decide where to stand? Because you know that it makes a difference. You want to be aware when you enter any room that you stand in a traffic pattern. This will be near the food, en route to the restrooms, near the bar. You want to physically position yourself so that you have as many hits of interaction with people passing you by. You stand on the periphery, you've taken yourself out of the game. There's some gender differences in our body position. Men prefer to, when they're speaking one-on-one, you stand next to each other, or men stand next to each other and speak directly, perhaps look at each other. Women prefer to face directly and make eye contact. So if you're a female and you're in a network scenario and you walk up to a gentleman and you face him, he will back away from you. And you might think, oh my goodness, what did I do? It's nothing to do with you. It has to do with the way we're wired. If you're a gentleman and you walk up to a female and you stand next to her, she'll sort of be like, what are you doing? And she'll come around to you. It creates some pretty funny dances. Just be aware of, when you're approaching someone, what is comfortable for them. It's your job to make them. You have that 9 seconds. Do you think if you pitch right into your elevator pitch or you hand your business card out, that you're going to find as much value than if you actually connect with them in a commonality as a human being? When you walked in after breakfast and you came into this room, how did you decide where to sit? In the back row? On an aisle? Or at the wall? How many people have had the opportunity to come up and chat with you if you're buried in the periphery? How do we communicate in business? We have face-to-face conversations, we have phone calls, and we have email or text messages. How effective do you think an email is for getting across your communication point? Do you have body language in an email? Nope. Do you have tone of voice? Nope. So what are your chances of your reader actually getting you clearly? How many times have you had disruptions because someone read an email wrong? That's why they invented emoticons, little smiley faces, to try and add tone into email. It's just a strengthening, I'm sure you've heard it before, the most effective way to communicate and get business done at a faster pace is through face-to-face conversations. Skype is also a great tool thanks to technology. How important is it actually what you put on in the morning? Does it make that much of a difference? I hear maybe that doesn't really matter in our industry, we don't really care. It's not just about the tangibles, it's about the intention behind. A well put together outfit says that you pay attention to detail. And if you pay attention to detail in the way you dress, you likely also are as meticulous in your work. It adds credibility to you. Color. I love color because it has a lot of science behind it. Just like a company has a corporate color palette, like Coca-Cola is red, IBM is blue, you should have a color palette as well. It's a psychology of color. When we talk about the person walking across the room and you're judging them, you can have an advantage of that by looking at the psychology of color. Here's a little chart that explains, regardless of my personal preference, I am neurologically wired to think concentration when I see the color yellow. So if you're going to an environment and you want to have one of these as your objectives, you can wear that color as an extra kick in your skill set. Language are words that you use that diminish your credibility and take away from the power of what you're saying. Examples of this are feel versus believe. I feel this will happen, I believe this will happen. Believe is much stronger. There are hedges. It says, if we land the account versus when we land the account. You want to be known or not? You hiding your name or not? And they come in with their hand perpendicular or parallel to the floor. This forces you to come in underneath. I'm in charge. I am dominating you. So when you come in and you're on top, or the person is shaking your hand and you're on top, by simply pushing your elbow down, you have just, again, leveled the playing field. I don't want you to miss out on the perfect prelim to a first impression. What's your online image? Who are you in the world before you step into a room? So look at these photos of these two gentlemen. They both have an identical resume, identical credentials. Raise your hand if you'd hire number one. Raise your hand if you'd hire number two. The question is which one has more powerful curiosity, engagement, enthusiasm? Who do you respond to and why? And I looked at your profiles. I would say maybe 60% of you actually have a photo. If you don't have a photo, you're out of the game. You've just lost your opportunity for someone that may have researched you to recognize you by face. I'm going to ask you to take away three things today. The first is assess. Assess yourself. How do you perceive you show up in the world? Look at the 5 categories: leadership, presence, wardrobe, speaking etiquette. Rate yourself on those. And then look externally and do an external assessment. Ask 5 colleagues and 5 personal people to do that same assessment of you. How do they see you? And look, is there an alignment or is it off? Second is to work through that worksheet, the funnel, and begin to define your personal brand. And the third is IDP. IDP is an individual development plan. It's an HR tool that most of you likely have to help you to define your skills and your goals and work towards them. It's not unusual that these don't include personal branding or soft skills. The curriculum we've covered today can be added to remember at all times that you are enough and you are your best self. Bring yourself to the table, show up, be authentic, be wholehearted, and put yourself in your own audience. Look from the outside. Thank you very much.